Next 24 hours, the Senate will do what it should do. That's actually go through the process of advice and consent with a nominee, this time for an attorney general, William Barr. William Barr is eminently qualified. It's been interesting to be able to hear my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk all day long today about how qualified William Barr is, but then always pause with a but, and then to be able to take off on a Mueller investigation. Well, let me get what this means by eminently qualified. He has an exceptionally impressive legal career. He serves at one of the top U.S. firms. He began his legal career actually as an analyst and the legislative counsel for the CIA decades ago. He worked on domestic policy for Ronald Reagan. He served as the Deputy Attorney General from 1990 to 1991, and then he served as the Attorney General of the United States for George Herbert Walker Bush from 1991 to 1993. When he was appointed to be the Attorney General in 1991, his nomination passed out of the Judiciary Committee with a unanimous vote of 14-0. Judiciary Chairman, a gentleman named Joe Biden at the time, called him a fine Attorney General. He was overwhelmingly confirmed by the Senate in 1991 in a less partisan time, when Democrats and Republicans both looked at his qualifications, not a political agenda. We have the unique moment to be able to look at someone who is a good Attorney General for the United States, who served faithfully, but then has a season away from that to be able to turn around and do it again. How many of us wouldn't want to redo something we did years ago? And to say, I did it and it went well, but if I had a little more time and I could do it over again, I would do things better. We have that chance with William Barr. It's a unique moment for us as a nation to be able to bring somebody back like that again. What happened under his watch? Well, he believed during that time period, and still believes now, that personal security of the citizens of the United States is the primary first duty of government and of the U.S. Attorney General. Despite what he's been smeared at this floor over and over again with people saying he's being hired to be the president's personal attorney, for those that have actually met with him and talked to him, he speaks openly about law enforcement in the United States. He talks about working with local law enforcement, U.S. attorneys, to actually prosecute crime, to be able to go after the issues that distract the American values and the American people from living the American dream. During his tenure, when he was Attorney General, he spearheaded the initiative like the Weed and Seed program, which removed violent drug offenders off the streets. Under Attorney General Barr in the 1990s, violent crime in the United States went down because they were aggressively prosecuting for crime. He's also the Attorney General that supervised the enforcement and the implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Incredibly difficult legal process to be able to go through and to be able to implement nationwide to protect the rights of individuals that have been overlooked in our country for 2 centuries, those with disabilities. It was a major feature of what he did during that time period. He brings this unique, important perspective of dealing with law enforcement, background, experience. All of those things look like they would be a slam dunk to be able to come to this floor and to have wide bipartisan support, except for this. Except that he's being used as a message in the Mueller investigation. It's not that he said that I'm going to stop the Mueller investigation. It's not that he said anything else about that. He did write a 19-page letter as an attorney into the law practice that's helping President Trump go through this process, and to say, hey, as a former attorney general, here's all the things that you should be advised of when you're working with the president. Here are the key features. It seems like a very kind thing to be able to do for any president. He wrote the letter and all that information in and gave those details. Fine. He's also said over and over again he's not going to undercut the Mueller investigation. But some of my Democratic colleagues have said, no, it's got to be more than that. He's got to recuse himself like Jeff Sessions did. He has to recuse himself. If he doesn't recuse himself, he can't be there. Well, may I remind you that the reason Jeff Sessions had to recuse himself was because he was on the campaign team for the president. And when he got into that position as Attorney General, the ethics team advised him from the Department of Justice hey, since you're on the campaign team, you can't be the investigator for the campaign team on the campaign you were actually on. And at that time, Attorney General Jeff Sessions agreed and said that does violate ethics for the person on the team to help investigate the team, and recused himself. That was not William Barr. So all this talk that he's got to recuse himself like Jeff Sessions does, it's a completely different situation. Why should he recuse himself? Because apparently people don't want the Mueller investigation to have any supervision, which again I find fascinating politically, because I distinctly remember during the Clinton administration, many of the Democrat colleagues that are still in this chamber now being furious at Ken Starr. They can't believe Donald Trump would say he's frustrated with the Mueller team, but they had no problem with the Clinton White House literally saying we are going to war against Ken Starr. The term witch hunt is not new. The Clinton administration used that same term against Ken Starr. So this is a fascinating side-by-side to me to be able to look at this. Here's what I would advise. Let the Mueller investigation finish its job. They have a job, let them do its job. Quite frankly, the Attorney General shouldn't be in the day-to-day operations of the Mueller investigation. That's why we have a special counsel. But at some point, the special counsel has to turn information over to someone. William Barr is not going to be the one writing all the information for the special counsel. But neither should he have this incredibly high standard, and neither should he be held to some standard to do something that he's not going to do, and that is to go try to interfere in this process. He's made that very clear. He's also made it very clear, verbally, in committee settings, and in written statements, that he's going to release whatever comes out is under the law from the Mueller investigation. Now, I think some people believe that the Mueller investigation is going to release a big, giant written report like the Senate Intel Committee will do. That's not the task of the Mueller investigation, is to be able to release some big, giant report. Their task is to go through as prosecutors and to be able to recommend indictments. If they choose to write a report, that's up to them. Now, this Congress could try to mandate that, but that's not their requirement. They're a special counsel. This is a group of attorneys making recommendations. That's all it is. So don't judge an attorney general nominee based on some accusation from some thought of what might happen and what he might do. Judge him what he actually says and what he has done. Hold him to that standard. I've also had some folks back in my state say that they've heard that William Barr supports the possibility of some states having red flag laws on Second Amendment. Now, I spoke to William Barr. He came to my office. We spent about 45 minutes together. We went through a whole litany of issues and questions of his background, the issues that he's dealing with, his passions, his dealing with local law enforcement, his cooperations with state prisons, consent decrees, religious liberty. We talked through drug trials and processing. We talked through a whole issue of gang violence, on and on and on, including the Second Amendment. He reiterated again that he's supportive of the Second Amendment in every area. And if someone loses their Second Amendment rights, it is only based on due process. That is a court being involved. That's always been the standard for us as a country. I've seen some of the things that have been written about him, that he's not supportive of the Second Amendment. That is absolutely false. And I can say those things based on my personal conversation with him and asking him those questions. But also see the things that he's actually written, not the things written about him, but the things that he's actually written and said about the Second Amendment. He's a protector of our rights and of the Constitution. That's one of the things that he has sworn an oath to protect as a previous Attorney General, and would have to be able to swear an oath again to be able to do that. This is a simple thing for us. We're looking at a qualified nominee with excellent experience and background and a passion to protect our country, who has shown a passion towards law enforcement and protecting our nation and reducing violent crime in our country. I'm looking forward to him stepping into that office and taking the lead with the Department of Justice. But, Mr. President, may I make a side note on this? This nomination reminds me again why it is so important that this Senate fixes our nomination process. We have a broken nomination process, period. If you take the last 6 presidents combined, take their first 2 years when they were putting their staff together in their first 2 years of office, for the last 6 presidents, 25 times someone in the Senate asked for additional time to debate that person. It could be any one of 100. One person asked for additional time to debate in the last 6 presidents, a total of 25 times. 25 times, somebody said in this body, in the last 6 presidents combined, we need a little more time to debate this person. So they asked for additional what's called post-cloture debate time. That is a full intervening day, 24 hours, plus an additional 30 hours after that just to be able to debate. It's fine. Highly controversial nominees, entirely appropriate. But in the first 2 years of President Trump's presidency, that request has been made 128 times. 25 times in the last 6 presidents combined versus 128 times for this president. It's not because they've been all that controversial as nominees, though I'm fully aware President Trump has nominated some folks that created heated debate on this floor. But it was certainly not 128 times. In fact, many of the times after we had that post-cloture intervening day, plus another 30 hours, that person passed either unanimously or with 90-plus votes. They weren't controversial. It was trying to shut down this Senate and to shut down this president to keep him from hiring his staff. That's never happened before. There's never been a time that the Senate has tried to prevent an elected president from hiring their own team until now. In May of 2017, I made a proposal to be able to fix our post-cloture debate time, seeing what would happen. Continued that conversation over and over again with many of my Democratic colleagues. Last session, we brought in front of the Rules Committee a proposal that was made by Harry Reid. And then it was passed under Harry Reid's time and his leadership in the Senate. That is to limit post-cloture debate time and to be able to streamline that process. I brought that exact same proposal back out and said Republicans voted with Democrats to make sure that this process would work in 2013 and 14. Now will Democrats vote with Republicans on the exact same language, and we'll do this together to be able to fix this process. Democrats gave me the Heisman at that point and said, no, it was good for you to vote with us, but we're not going to vote with you. And that was all last session. I've brought up again another proposal that went to the Rules Committee today. It is a simple proposal. Historically in this body, there haven't been a lot of post-cloture debate times on nominees, especially not things like district court judges or deputy assistant secretaries of some entity. I met today with the person who will be the IRS counsel. The counsel of the IRS, which I dare guess no one in this room could name who it is right now, and certainly most people in America couldn't. Oh, but they've been blocked for a year so that the IRS does not have a chief counsel. Not a controversial nominee, will probably pass unanimously or near unanimously. Just to prevent the IRS from having a counsel, they've been slowed down. So my proposal is simple. We can still do post-cloture debate. If anyone in this body wanted to be able to slow down any nominee, they could still do that. They could request a full additional day, 24 hours. And then in the next day, instead of adding an additional 30, it would be just an additional 2. So instead of getting a full day plus 30 hours, they would get a full day plus 2 hours. That's still a lot of time. Quite frankly, only 25 times in the last 6 presidents there's been any request for any additional time. So that would still allow a long period of time, but would expedite the process. And so at least we could go through this. If we don't fix this now, this will become the habit of the Senate from here on out. And when the next Democrat president is elected, I can assure you we will have the same issue with nominees that President Trump is having. Because it only takes one senator. It only takes one to say, no, I want a whole intervening day plus 30 hours for every one of your nominees. By the way, the president puts 1,200 people through the process of nomination, 1,200. So count the time that will happen in the days ahead. I know this is part of the resist Trump movement and to shut down the operation of this presidency, but it actually is going to shut down the operation of every president from here on out if we don't fix this rule. So I'm asking my Democratic colleagues to look long, to not look right in front of us, to look at the future of where this is really headed and what's really happening to this Senate. The precedent that is being set right now on debate will be the standard in the days ahead. Let's fix it now so we can get this resolved long term for the sake of our country to be able to do this right. With that, I yield the floor.